Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Today's program is brought to you by Korin, a supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. For more information, visit Korin.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. We're a member-supported food radio network broadcasting over 35 weekly shows live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. Join our hosts as they lead you through the world of craft brewing, behind the scenes of the restaurant industry, inside the battle over school food, and beyond. Find us at heritageradionetwork.org.
Hello, and welcome to A Hungry Society. I'm Portia Wilson, and this is the show where we talk about food, food media, culture, and so much more. Today's guest is Shelley Worrell, founder and Chief Curator of CARIBBEING, an organization that celebrates and preserves Caribbean culture. Since its founding, Shelley has produced over 200 public programs in partnership with top cultural institutions, including the Brooklyn Museum, the Municipal Art Society, Queens Museum, and Studio Museum in Harlem. She has also taken CARIBBEING global, with appearances in Poland, France, Barbados, and Haiti to represent Brooklyn as the Caribbean capital of the world at the Caribbean Studies Association. Shelley has been featured in Brooklyn Magazine, Black Enterprise, Caribbean Life, Good Morning America, Guardian Media, and the New York Times. Shelley, welcome to A Hungry Society.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is so much fun.
I'm so excited to have you here today because I love CARIBBEING and the mission of it. Can you talk a little bit about the organization for listeners who maybe aren't familiar?
Sure. So CARIBBEING was something that I conceptualized as an undergraduate student right here in Brooklyn at Brooklyn College. So around 1999, largely because, of course, me being the child of two Caribbean immigrants and living in Flatbush, which is home to one of the largest and most diverse Caribbean populations in the world, I wasn't really seeing ourselves represented in cultural programming, in media, in the arts, in the way that I really thought that we should be reflected. So I had this idea to have a film festival. It was actually, we started off with the Flatbush Film Festival. And but I didn't have the capacity, the resources, the know-how. So I worked as a catering. So I worked in food. My first jobs were in food. And then from there, I moved on to work in the media. I went to grad school initially at NYU, and I was studying tourism and hospitality, again, because I was really interested in the development of Caribbean culture and heritage, and quickly learned that that wasn't really what I was looking for in terms of a program. So I transferred to the new school, and I was studying media studies, again, because of that gap and that deficit of Caribbean representation. And I had a friend who invited me. She was curating a space in Flatbush. She was at a library, and she called me up one day, and she said, "Shelley, do you remember you wanted to launch CARIBBEING and the Flatbush Film Festival? Well, we have this space that you can come and curate." And so we set out to launch CARIBBEING and the Flatbush Film Festival, and that's really how it came to be. So it started off with film, and our first programs were huge failures. No one really showed up. We didn't know what we were doing. You think just because you're doing something, people will come, and you quickly learn that that's not the way it works. So by the end, we did have people show up, but they were all senior citizens, and it again wasn't my vision for the organization. And we do program, and we do love seniors, and we have done quite a bit of programming that are specifically geared towards senior citizens, but it just wasn't my overall vision. And so I went back to my day job. I was like, look, let me just go back and do what I know how to do. And then the earthquake happened in Haiti. This is 2010. And our co-founder, he was in Haiti working on a relief effort and did a film. And of course, there's also a really large and significant Haitian population in Brooklyn and in Flatbush. And so I wanted to screen this film and have a whole day where we can go and really celebrate with the community. I wouldn't say celebrate, but really have a conversation and dialogue around, what happened in Haiti. I was personally affected. My mentor was working at the UN, and she was one of the ones who had perished there. So even for myself, I wanted a space where I can sort of convene. And so we brought together a group of artists and filmmakers, and we went about the programming very differently than when we initially set out at the library. And so we partnered with Brooklyn College, and we had a largely successful event. There were over 300 people in attendance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so then, and that's what really put us into the multidisciplinary space, right? Because it was not only about film, it was also art and music and talks and community, and there was also food there as well.
So you talk about, like, in interviews that I've read, you talk about how growing up in Flatbush, it was just, you were immersed in Caribbean culture all the time. And that's a big part of why you started CARIBBEING. Can you explain the Caribbean culture of Flatbush?
Yeah.
For people who haven't been there?
Yeah, so, Flatbush, though it's changing right now, so we're sort of like right in the... in that moment of gentrification, but growing up in between Flatbush and East Flatbush, you just really had a lot of exposure to sort of like Caribbean culture, Caribbean food, Caribbean lifestyle, and it was also really diverse. So I think it was one of those spaces very early on where I was able to really understand that my identity was a bit more broad than being island specific, because suddenly you're at the West Indian Market, or you're at even on the bus or on the train, and you realize that you have a lot of common denominators, you have a lot of commonalities. So we all eat plantains, right?
Right.
A lot of us are eating like breadfruit and mangoes and that kind of thing. There may be different varieties or different ways that we're preparing them, but there's all of these commonalities that we have. I also spent a lot of time growing up in the Caribbean as well. So I spent all my summers, like a lot of Caribbean kids, from diaspora cities like New York, Brooklyn specifically. So I think that also had a very heavy influence. And of course, my travel, because I've traveled extensively in the region as well. But I would say between the thing that really... one of the most profound impacts on my own sort of like cultural identity was growing up in Flatbush.
I love that you talk about, like, there's within Caribbean culture, there's this, like, there's this group, but within the group, there's so much like singularity, but we are all kind of part of the same.
Exactly.
Same region and
experience.
Right. But certain islands get very nationalistic.
Yes, I've been talking about that a lot. Right. So people ask me all the time, like, one of their favorite questions is like, where are you from? And I just say, now I'm like, I am CARIBBEING. I love all of my islands alike. But people are, very proud of where they're from, and as we all should be, right? Because that's a huge part, that's sort of like your accent, it's your national dish, it's, some of your earliest memories, you remember going to school or the capital or just very specific places. And that's really a part of your living memory and your family history. But for us, it's really about, no man is an island, right? And so, I think together we're much stronger. And a lot of us have, in addition to commonalities, whether it's through food or culture, music, that kind of thing. But we also share a lot of the painful history as well.
Absolutely. So speaking of family history and dishes, what did you grow up eating?
Oh my gosh. So many things because I come from a family of cooks and I cook too. And I think but no one ever taught me how to cook. So my mom was very specific about that, like in terms of her own, sort of the way she wanted me to be brought up. It was never like, she was like, my daughter has to learn how to cook, or she has to be able to, be like some perfect, woman or a housewife or whatever that, construct looks like. But I actually love cooking. But, one of the things I do remember, of course, is Sunday lunch, right? So that's a huge part of a lot of Caribbean households. And that, Sunday lunch is really made very early in the morning, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. So by like 10 o'clock, the food is already cooked. And you're having sort of like this epic meal around like 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, around midday. Another thing was roti. So roti was, I believe, the first word that I learned how to spell. That's what my parents told me, and it's still one of my favorite foods to this day. But every Saturday, my father made roti with different types of curries, and he would invite our family over. And so that was in Brooklyn. And some of my other, going to the market, I think is such and food shopping is such a huge part of my experience as well. Whether that was with my aunts in the Caribbean or with my mom, and I still go food shopping with my mom. Yeah, it's like this thing that we do. It's like, one of those traditions, and I didn't realize like how much and how important that is still to this day to me. Like even for myself, I go to like 5 supermarkets just to curate or like pick my select.
Get the different ingredients that you need.
Yeah, there's like one that I go to for seafood, and there's another one if I want meat, or a few that I might go to for meat. So there are meat markets or different places because I like the freshness or the way they cut it or that kind of thing. And the same thing for fruits, for vegetables and other ingredients. So more and more I've realized that like going food shopping or to the market is a huge part of our sort of like culinary tradition.
And you talked about there's this New York Times series that's like a day in the life or a Sunday in the life of someone, and you were featured in that series. And you talked about how cooking is like therapy for you. It's very therapeutic.
Yeah, it's definitely an act of self-care for me. I love cooking. I mean, I love dining. Like eating is like one of my favorite things to do. I just love food. But as I was thinking about this podcast today, I would say that there's nothing that gives me greater joy than to like actually prepare a meal and really enjoy it. I also garden. So I grow a lot of herbs in my backyard, over 20. So sometimes, like 20-something, sometimes 30-something, and I grow a few vegetables, and I've been starting to grow lettuce. Though my squirrels, like they kind of,
They like your lettuce too.
they not the lettuce. They like my tomatoes and my eggplant.
Yeah.
So
they're making their own salad.
Right, exactly. Right. And they actually eat it on my table, my outdoor table. So like they have manners at least.
They're like helping themselves. They have a little setup.
Yes,
a little glass
they do.
Of wine.
Right. So, but cooking is such a huge act of self-care for me. I just love to go in my backyard, gather my herbs, and or just like, if it's not in like now, just putting something together, even if it's with what I have, right? And that's another thing that I've learned how to do is like sort of put together some kind of meal, whether it's a soup or, some kind of one pot dish with sort of like what I have. But yeah, cooking is very, very therapeutic. And I see it as like one of those top acts of self-care for myself.
That is one of the things that for me is like a common thread throughout every island in the Caribbean is, the dishes may be different depending on, the native culture there and the Africans that came and the different countries that came. But food is always paramount. Right.
Food is like so central. Food and music, I would say, are like two of the things like on every single island that is like that common thread. And just one of those things that is a really important part of the culture throughout the Caribbean, whether the English, the French, the Spanish, Caribbean. I haven't spent as much time in the Dutch Caribbean, but I would imagine that it is there too.
It is there too. So actually, I went to Aruba recently, and Aruba, because of where it is, it's off the coast of Venezuela. So the music, it was the first Caribbean island I've been to where instead of hearing like soca or reggae, you hear reggaeton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and because Spanish is the second like most common language.
Oh, right, because of its proximity.
Right. And so it was just like this really cool mashup of like of Dutch culture and Caribbean culture and South American culture.
Oh, wow, very cool.
Yeah, and to me, that's like one of the coolest things about the Caribbean is each island is like its own unique mashup that you won't find anywhere else in the world.
Right, and so I just got back from Guadeloupe on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And I spent like most of the last 2 months there. I was there for the entire month of January. So I got there on the 1st and I got back Sunday the 29th. And, they have a really interesting mashup because, they have a very strong French tradition. And so you see that reflected in a lot of their cooking. So they're making these amazing gratins with provision. So with plantain, of sweet potatoes, of cassava, things that I haven't seen elsewhere. Like I've seen breadfruit pie. I've seen, a lot. My aunt makes breadfruit salad. So instead of a potato salad, a breadfruit salad. So I've seen a lot of different. They even have a breadfruit gratin. They have, a lot of islands have black puddings. They have white puddings that are made out of lambi, out of maru, so saltfish, crab, which are amazing.
Yeah, this sounds amazing. I'm on the book a ticket. I'm going now.
Yes, I have all the places to eat and all the things that you should be doing.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of Shelley from CARIBBEING.
Today's program is brought to you by Korin, supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. Korin is proud of their Japanese culture and traditions, but they want you to know that their products are not just for Japanese restaurants. Their knives and tableware bring out the best qualities of food from every culture and fit into every restaurant, from French to Pan-Asian to American, and that is why they're located in New York City, where people from every country in the world come to eat. Korin's unique store in Lower Manhattan is home to perhaps the most extensive collection of Japanese chef knives in the world, including Japan, plus the rarest natural sharpening stones and exquisitely designed tableware. They also host special events such as knife sharpening demonstrations and parties with New York's most famous chefs and restaurateurs. Korin is dedicated to this ideal, bringing the implicit and elegance of Japanese culture to your table, be it in your home or in the finest restaurant. For more information, visit Korin.com.
All right, and so we are back with Shelley from CARIBBEING. So let's talk dining. Do you have a favorite restaurant at the moment?
In Brooklyn or?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. So because I've been spending the time, as I mentioned, in the Caribbean over the last 2 months, my favorite restaurant at the moment is O'Witty's, which is a locally owned restaurant that's in Guadeloupe. It's on the marina in St. Francois. And just as I was talking about earlier, doing this amazing job of really curating sort of like the best French Creole food. And his desserts are to die for. I'm not even a dessert eater, but he has like all of these like sweet potato, like again, out of ground provision with coconut, macaroons, and his sides are also just really original and innovative. So I would say Owitty's is one of my favorite.
Do you have a separate answer for in Brooklyn?
So this summer, I was really into hummus. And I think that has to do with my love for curry and chana and doubles. But, of course, hummus has like this smoother, creamier texture. So I've been spending a lot of time at Mimi's Hummus in Ditmas Park, which is in Flatbush and really close to home for me. And it was like the first place that I had a meal when I got back. So I got back Sunday. Monday, I was having lunch at Mimi's Hummus.
Nice. I have to check it out.
And they also have like a lot of variations of it. So they have like a mushroom hummus, and it's really, 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 really good.
Do you have a favorite Caribbean restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, Caribbean. Let me think about it. A bakery. So
Yeah.
Allen's.
Okay.
I love Allen's Bakery. So they have some of the most amazing currants and coconut rolls. I also am a huge fan of patties. So there's La Baguette that's on Nostrand Avenue, very close to my house. So I really love the smoked herring patties. Smoked herring is, if I had a choice between like saltfish and smoked herring is always my first choice. I like Jen's Roti a lot. I love that they have really, really, really good doubles. So I would say, and Peppa's for jerk chicken. Like Peppa's jerk chicken is really like off the charts. And the one in Flatbush, because I think that there's another outpost in Bed-Stuy now. And I was talking to the owner country last month when we were doing one of our little Caribbean food and culture tours, and he was like, "This is the original one," and I was like, "Yes, I know." And I remember when that Peppers was Danny and Peppers, and they were actually located in the back of a fish market, and it was on the other side of the street. So I love Peppa's. They have amazing jerk chicken, pepper shrimp, escovitch fish. So those are some of my favorite Caribbean restaurants at the moment.
Awesome. It's there's so many Caribbean restaurants in Brooklyn and then in New York, in the New Jersey area. Funny story. I actually wrote an article recently and tried to do a roundup, and I had to keep the number of places to 3 in Jersey and 4 in Manhattan and X amount in Brooklyn. And when I tell you, I got so much backlash.
Right.
Because comments, because everybody has their favorite spots.
Right.
And Caribbean food and Caribbean restaurants, you're talking about, 30 to 40 different countries. It's so hard to try and round them up.
Exactly.
And from fine dining to takeout.
Right.
There's so much.
Right.
So I just knew that I was going to get a lot of shit for it.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah, that's the thing is, a lot of the best Caribbean food is really takeout, right? And you just sort of go, you can't even eat in the restaurants often because they don't have the space for it.
Right.
So a lot of them aren't set up. I also like Susie's. So if I can just add, I like Susie's Roti a lot. It's my favorite roti shop at the moment. It's on Church Avenue, but I think they really did, and Coney Island. But I think they did a really good job of curating the space, and you can actually eat there.
Okay.
And I'm a person who eats my roti unwrapped, and I eat it with my hands. And I will never eat a wrapped roti ever, anywhere. It doesn't matter. So I like when I'm having roti, I want it on the spot. And they also cook it on demand. So it's not like the roti is pre-cooked and then you order it. You go there, you're like, this is what I want. And then they make it for you. And then you could sit and eat
amazing.
it. It's so good.
Did you go out to eat a lot when you were growing up?
We did, actually. So my parents, we went out to eat and we traveled a lot. And my mother was very big into exposing us to diverse cultures. So we ate a lot of different things. And my mom still, and I cook a lot of different things. In fact, some of my best dishes are not Caribbean or traditionally Caribbean. It's some kind of like mashup or remix,
Right.
Inspired by. But yeah, we went out. I've been going out to eat like all of my life.
Wow. And you cook a big meal at home. Like that was part of the New York Times article where you have friends over and you'll like grill a fish and have wine, but also rum from all over the Caribbean. Can you talk about these dinners that you have?
Yeah. So for a long time, I was having friends over every Sunday. So I was having these events called Super Sunday, and they started to become really exhausting because when people come over, it was brunch and then it was dinner and then it was like more drinks and that kind of thing. So I stopped doing it for a while. And now it's sort of like smaller and more intimate. So we'll invite a few people over, or we'll just have, just be us or us and family. But fish is one of like I've been on a Food 52 like cooking or live Facebook Live show as well. Preparing fish, because fish is really intimidating for people to make.
Yes.
A lot of people think, oh my God, fish, it's whole fish. Like there's eyes, there's a head. And it's like the easiest thing to make. Like I prefer to cook fish than meat. And I don't really eat that much meat. And so I don't cook that much meat, whether it's, dining at home or when we go out. But fish is like the easiest thing. So I'm sort of like on this mission to demystify like cooking fish, whether it's like a steak of salmon or sea bass or something like that, or sort of like a whole snapper or porgies. So it's become like one of my specialties. So a lot of times when people come over, like that's what they want. And it's so easy, right? Because I can pre-prepare it. I wrap them up in foil. I can either put them in the oven or I can put them on the grill. Wow. They're stuffed with either, and I mix it up. So sometimes it's stuffed with fresh potatoes, or sometimes it's stuffed with couscous, or sometimes only with vegetables. So it has this very like escovitch kind of inspiration, but it's not exactly.
Right.
But yeah, I love entertaining. I think I got that from my dad. My father just loved having people over and cooking for them. But, hosting is a little bit exhausting.
Right.
Some of my parties last until like 2:00 in the morning.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's a good sign, though. People are like, oh, let's hang out instead of, I'm going to get out of here.
Right, exactly.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah, but 12-hour parties are a lot.
Right. Especially, as a host, you're like, all right, let's wrap it up.
Exactly.
So can you talk about one of the worst dining experiences you've ever had?
I haven't, I haven't really had one because I'm so, there was once when I was in the south of France and I overindulged in shellfish and escargot, and I was sick for the whole entire night.
Oh, no.
I have never been that sick. I mean, like, I don't want to get into details, but it was just bad. And that's really the only thing that I could think about in, the last, and going, to Poland. I was in Poland once as for CARIBBEING, and that was a bit challenging for me just because of my dietary sort of like preferences. I'm much more of a seafood eater. They eat a lot more meat and sort of like, potatoes and things like that. So that was really challenging for me. Personally, there wasn't as much wine. There was like vodka.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not really a vodka fan. And they're like, well, it's cherry vodka. And I'm like...
It's still vodka.
Right, exactly. But, it's kind of like going to the Caribbean and not drinking rum. So I had a little bit of vodka. But Poland was another one that was very, very challenging. But I was in a very small village of like 1,500 to 2,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's like this film festival that... was focusing on the Caribbean, and they invited CARIBBEING to be there. We helped to curate the films as well as to present them and facilitate some of the talkbacks. But I just think that this unique situation and just where I was in Poland. And so those are, I would say, the only two things, just because like there I couldn't get any seafood or just like what I wanted to eat. So I was just like eating potatoes, like pierogies every day, literally.
And your body was like, what is happening?
For 12 days, that's like too long.
Right. That's a lot of pierogies.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you have like a running list of how many islands you've been to.
The last time I counted, it was about 30. And that includes Cuba, Haiti. In fact, I'm going to Haiti on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
For about 5 days. I was invited on a trip. So yeah, Trinidad, Jamaica, Guadeloupe, Martinique. A lot of them I've been to dozens of times. And a few of them I've only been to a handful of times. I would say the huge gap for me right now is the Dutch Caribbean. So I have to make a very conscious effort to get there really soon.
Yeah. It's my dream to go to all of the Caribbean islands. That's quite an endeavor, though.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it together.
I'm just going to come with you now. Like,
yeah.
Just put me in your suitcase.
You're invited.
Thank you. So you went to Haiti. Are you going to Haiti recently?
I'm going on Sunday.
On Sunday. And then you just came back from Guadeloupe. Where did you go before then?
I was in Guadeloupe, too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we have a house there.
Yeah, and your husband is from Martinique, right?
Right, he's Martinican and Guadeloupean. So we have a house in Saint Francois, which is sort of on the far eastern end of the island. So I've been spending a lot more of my winters there, so I could live like my best Caribbean life in the Caribbean.
Right.
So just sort of like moving my work there for a couple of months. And I'm just trying to think, where else have I been to recently? I've been spending most of my time in like, it seems like the Francophone Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Haiti. Yeah, those are sort of like my most recent and or upcoming trips.
Nice.
For now.
For now, yes. So my last question for you is, if you could have your last meal in a restaurant, where would it be and who is invited?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this for a while. So probably would be in the Caribbean with some spectacular view of the ocean. So it doesn't have to be directly on the beach, but I think having some kind of ocean view. And I would invite some of my my friends that I grew up with in the Caribbean, because they're just so much fun. And I love being around them. They just have like these really, and they have lived in the Caribbean all of their lives, and there's something about their spirit that just makes me so happy. And it just makes me feel really comfortable and at home and welcomed. And there's like no like pretense, like there's no like, okay, like it's just a very natural, organic feeling. But if I had to, and of course I would invite my mom, my husband. But if I had to like invite celebrity type people.
You don't have to, but if you
I
would
invite Oprah. I'm a huge fan of Oprah.
Yes.
And I've been dreaming that I meet her. Like I met and I'm like talking to her like this. So I would invite her and probably Rihanna, because I'm obsessed with Rihanna.
What's interesting is that no one's mentioned Rihanna yet, but I've heard Oprah before twice now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. She's on the invite list
That's
for
right.
people's last dinners.
Right, and I want to actually be invited to one of her lunches.
Right. Exactly. They do look really good.
Yeah, they look amazing.
They look really classy.
Yeah, exactly.
And extravagant.
Right.
So what are you eating at this dinner?
Oh my gosh, everything. I want callaloo. I want, I want some goat. I love goat. So definitely some roti. I would say probably some of that white pudding that I was talking about that they make, the boudin that they make in the French Caribbean. Probably a lot of like Caribbean fruits too. Like I want some mangoes. I feel like I haven't had like a really good diverse selection of mangoes because every time I'm in the Caribbean, it's not mango season. So there's only one variety that you can get. So I would want starch mangoes, Dudu's mangoes, which are like those smaller, sweet, juicy mangoes that I grew up eating. And even some rare fruits like a mommy apple, which is sort of, it's a very, very large fruit that's found in the Caribbean, and it has a similar texture and taste to a mango. So I would just like want like the spread.
What are you drinking?
Probably like Mauby, just like refreshing. Or I would say a sorrel mimosa. So sorrel mixed with champagne, which is amazing. I serve that at a lot of my holiday parties.
I've never had that.
It's so good.
In my head, I'm like, oh, well, obviously that would be so tasty. I was going to say, sorrel and some Ray and Nephews, like the classic.
Exactly. Or some coconut rum and coconut water and rum would be good too.
Yeah.
And one of my friends also told me that coconut water and champagne is also pretty amazing.
Oh, wow. That's a good idea.
In a coconut.
Idea. Oh, in a coconut, too.
Yeah, so you pour the champagne into the coconut.
Are there going to be whole coconuts at your last dinner?
Yes, for sure. There were whole coconuts at my wedding.
Oh, well, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like I could talk to you about the Caribbean like all day.
We should just go there.
Right.
Let's book a ticket.
Let's just book a ticket now. That's what we're going to do.
Not a cruise, though. We are going to fly from island to island.
Are you anti-cruise, or are you like, if you do it?
I mean, I would say I'm not anti-cruise, but if I went on a cruise, it would have to be a very, like, unique cruise, right? It just wouldn't be, like, a cheesy cruise. So, first of all, it would probably have much less people than, like, a typical cruise ship. And I would say the destinations and the experiences on board, whether it was dining and or the cultural things that they were curating, would have to feel really authentic. Or at least from a place of, a place of authenticity. I don't know how else to describe it. So I'm not anti-cruise, but like a commercial cruise, I have never been, and I don't have any desire to go on.
You mean you don't want access to like a 24-hour pizza stand on a cruise with like 4,000 people?
Right, and or like, a fake wave pool or whatever it is that they do. Yeah, no, I'm good.
Or like Minnie and Mickey Mouse, on stage.
Right. Disney, like on ice in the middle of the Caribbean.
Pass.
I'm good.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is so much fun.
And thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time on The Hungry Society.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.